Walter White, Berkeley Hills. Howard Post, Kenema. Paul Edgar, Kenema.
Here.
Larry Hanlon, Caulfield.
Here.
Rachel Gunderson from Chambers, excused. Kathy Hogan, Hazel Grove.
Here.
Tom O'Brien, Hazel Grove.
Here.
Ray Gordon, Hillendale. William Gifford, Hillendale.
Here.
Bill Daniels, McLaughlin.
Here.
Alice Watts, McLaughlin. Tom Guile, Park Place.
Here.
Stephen Haverby, Park Place.
Here.
Bruce Danielson, Rivercrest.
Here.
Patty Brown, Rivercrest. Inger Rickenbach, South End. David Rickenbach,
Are
South
there two of them
End.
back there?
Linda Orson, Main Street. Nancy Crutchauer, Public Works.
Okay. I forgot to mention before we started the roll call for anyone watching or who will watch this in the future, this is a gathering meeting of the Citizens Involvement Council. This is all the neighborhood associations representatives getting together to discuss issues on our agenda for this evening. First up on the agenda, sorry.
We're doing the roll. We do have a couple of people that didn't introduce themselves.
Oh, there's a couple people who didn't introduce themselves. If they could do so, let's see, back in the corner.
I'm David Morgan.
What name?
Okay, what neighborhood? Or
Gaffney.
Daphne, okay. And Denise. That's right. And I'm about to introduce, well, I was about to say what the neighborhood associations were, but that's okay. I forgot where I left off. I'm about to introduce our guest speaker for this evening, Mr. Roger Rada, Oregon City School District.
Thank you. Is that mic on with the red? Is that it, Chris? Okay. Yeah, I always tell people, and no offense, because I know RADA is a tough name, but I say Rada Potato.
Okay, so wait, I wasn't sure if Rada,
I know, yeah. Rada Potato.
my French.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And Chris, I just wondered, do we have a screen in? A pleasure to be here. I know that either myself or some of our staff, is that going to work? Yeah. Some of our staff have presented some of the other some of the neighborhood associations. And I know William tends to attend a lot of those. So this is probably the third, fourth, fifth time or so that William's seen this presentation or some form of it. So appreciate William being out there at the neighborhoods. But I'm going to just make a presentation here, just to title it The State of the Schools. And how do we get it up on the screen then? Do I need to do something? It's all plugged in as far as I know.
We can see it on our monitors.
Okay, there you go.
You can? I cannot.
Oh, there we go. It just took a while to come on there. And yeah, if we could turn off the bright light above the screen, we'd be in great shape, I think.
Push this button to the left.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, mine.
Now you go the other one now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
No,
exactly. I'm just wondering if we can trim the lights a little bit. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Appreciate that.
Where's my chair?
Usually I like to stand up and walk around while I'm doing this, but I'll be a little contained here. State of the Schools presentation to the Oregon City Involvement Council. And first of all, I'd like to talk about the good news about the school district. And I want to review some of the test scores that we've had in the last several years. The last date that we can report is most of this is, yes, last year's data that we finally get about the end of August. So it's our most current testing data. But this is one of our key benchmarks, third grade reading. We try to have all of our students up and reading by the third grade proficiently. And you can see we've typically been above the state average, and this last year we were 5 percentage points above the state average. In fifth grade mathematics, again, kind of another measuring stick for us. Typically have been above the state average and 2 points above this last year. Seventh grade writing, really have done a remarkable job the last couple of years, and I've seen our 7th grade teachers working with students on their writing and really made a substantial improvement to where we're 11 percentage points above the state average. Now, we still have 39% of our students who are not meeting the state standard, so we still have a lot of work to do. But compared to the state average, we're feeling relatively good about where we are. 8th grade mathematics, again, typically above the state average. And 10th grade mathematics. Now, this is our high school scores really want to emphasize and brag about. The last 4 or 5 years, we've improved dramatically, where you can see 10th grade mathematics scores, the state average has remained relatively stable around mid-50s. And our high school scores have gone from 45% up to 81% a year ago, and then we dropped a percentage point to 80 last year. Again, made some dramatic improvements. That score, and I haven't looked at this last year's score, but that 81 percentile score, I want you to know that if you just looked at the mid and large high schools in Oregon, so that would be like Gladstone and up maybe, schools that size, because sometimes very small high schools can have pretty dramatic ups and downs, and they can score relatively high. But that score was, we had the 2nd highest percentage of students passing the mathematics test in the state of Oregon. That beat, and I know we don't like to compare ourselves to the people across the river, but that beat Lake Oswego High School scores, beat West Linn scores, beat Lake Ridge High scores. So we're pretty pleased with those scores. In reading and language arts at the 10th grade, same thing. A year ago, we were actually the 4th highest scores, and I won't tell you the 3 high schools that beat us, but they didn't beat us by much. So again, real pleased with what's happening at the high school. And then last year with our writing scores, again, and I met with that writing team. I mean, I just happened to sit in on their work. If you have children in our school district or grandchildren, you know that on Wednesdays, we release our students early, and our teachers have a chance to work in teams and collaborate and review what they're doing with students, how they're doing, if students are struggling or whatever. And I sat in on 3 different occasions with this writing team, and it was amazing the work they were doing. And the conversation goes something like, well, you got, 30 out of your 32 kids passed the writing. What did you do this last week on writing good paragraphs? And then they talk back and forth, and they say, well, why don't you take the 20 kids that didn't get that down yet, and for the next 3 days, kind of reteach that and work on it, and we'll take the other students and work on some other things related to writing, with the idea that we're really, what we say, intervening with our struggling learners, and really getting some payoffs. And last year in writing, again, our scores went up dramatically. Okay, so, now the bad news. And I think, you'd be hard-pressed to find people that don't know that the schools in Oregon, and really most of them across the country, are struggling financially. Most of the local news stations anymore run something, crisis in our schools, every other night or so. So the bad news is that the state's economy typically equals our school district budget. So we're looking at about $9 million in cuts to Oregon City a year ago, 2 years ago, that we're living with this year. So we made huge cuts. 7 million of those were to programs. 2 million of those were to staff salaries and benefits. Furlough days, we're seeing those across the state. This year, Oregon City had 5 furlough days. Teachers and the staff get no pay those days. Students, at their instructional days, aren't in school. Our neighboring districts ranged from, I think, North Platte had like about 15. I think West Linn had in that neighborhood. I think Canby had 17. So it was just a lot of furlough days to try to make budgets balance. Our current projection is just for slightly over an $8 million shortfall for this coming year. And budget cuts, of course, have a negative effect on our students. That typically means less instructional time because there's more students in classrooms and fewer days of instruction. They get less attention and support. So I just want to review a little bit about our budget briefly, where the money comes from, where we spend it. So by source here, we look at the big share of our money, really that 29% and the 60%, of course, add up to 89%, and that really comes from the state. Even though the money's collected locally on those property taxes from taxpayers here in Oregon City, that money basically goes to the state and becomes part of the state school fund. And then the other 60% comes from basically from income taxes. And so that's where most of our money comes from. And then we have other money from federal government, our beginning cash balance, and then other local funds. But again, our substantial amount of our money comes from the state or is allocated to us from the state. And where do we spend our money? Well, in Oregon City, we spend 2% of our money on our central administration. That's basically our central office staff and supports there. 17% go to buses, buildings, and food. 6% go to the office of the principal. And that's all the support services in an elementary building or a high school building. It's not just the principal's office, it's secretaries, it's counselors, it's librarians, everything that's not in the classroom. And then, 4% into business services and technology. Technology being our management information services, not computers in classrooms, but what we have to do to manage information in the district. So how does that compare to the rest of the state then? Because that alone is like, well, okay, why aren't you putting more money in the classroom, or why are you spending 6% on principal's office? So you give some sort of a measure. And these numbers are all audited. You can actually go to a website called the Chalkboard Project, which is financed by a group of foundations in Oregon, and it's called the Open Books Project is actually where this information comes from. So if you just Googled in Open Books Project, you'd find this information. But statewide, the Office of the Principal, the average is 7%. Again, ours is 6%. Business services and technology, we're right on with the state average. In teaching and student resources, we're really proud of that number in comparison to the state. Ours is 72, the state's is 69. By the way, if you add up these numbers, I can't remember which one it is, if it's local or state, but one of them adds up to 101 because of rounding sort of thing. Central administration, 2% for Oregon City, 3% is the state average, and then we're exactly the same for buses, buildings, and food. So again, we're proud of the fact that we put more money into the classroom than the state average. And now, what's been happening statewide? Again, we get a big chunk of our fund from the state of Oregon, and this graph really illustrates what's happened since the 203-05 biennium till the current biennium. But you can see in the blue is the total amount of money that the state, percentage-wise, that the state has allocated to education, K-12 and higher ed. And you see that's gone from 58.7% of the general fund down to 50.8% of the general fund. And the K-12 share of the state pie has gone from almost 45% down to just under 39%. And I think if you follow state government, what's happening, you know that where is that money going in? Who's getting that? Who's increasing in? Somebody's got to be increasing. Basically, it's safety around prisons. That the growth in those budgets have increased dramatically the last 10 years or so, and also in the Department of Human Services. And you can go, I don't know where, online and look at those budgets, but that's what's been happening. So that's one of the reasons that K-12 and education in general have been struggling the last few years. So where do we go from here? Well, first of all, we're in a process right now of coming up with about $8 million to balance our budget next year. Where do we get that? We get it from our employee contracts. They're giving up about $2.6 million next year in their salary and benefits, which is pretty much all of it. We're reducing programs further. We're taking about another $1 million hit in programs. Most of that is coming out of just what we have to support our building allocations, the money we give to schools and departments to spend to keep things going. They're just having to make much more difficult decisions about where they can spend their money. And then, again, drawing down our reserves, which are getting very low. And again, we're taking a look at more furlough days. Right now, we're scheduled for about 20 furlough days next year. 10 of those would be instructional days, and 10 of them would be non-instructional days, work days for our staff. And they both hurt badly because right now we're looking at starting school and having a half a day to meet with our staff and get organized and get things going. Usually we have 4 days to do that. And then there's other days during the year. I know if you have kids, it's like, why aren't we having school on Friday again? Well, we have the same number of days of school throughout the year, but we spread them a little farther apart, so every once in a while we can meet with our staff and either do some training or conduct some business. We're also, okay, that's the furlough day thing. And then, can we increase our revenues? Well, basically, we have very little control over increasing our revenues. We can hope the legislature comes up with more money, and there's still a little bit of a battle going on there. And then we can look at the other thing that, or source that school districts have available to them is a local option. And our school board back in February made a decision that they would go out for a local option. And you may know that Westland, Lake Oswego, Beaverton, Tigard, I think there's probably a dozen or so school districts in the state of Oregon that have a local option right now. Give you an example, you know, districts are supposed to get the same amount of money from the state. And we're about the same size as Lake Oswego, a little bit larger. Lake Oswego gets about another $6 million from their local option. They get another $2 million from their foundation, their school foundation, to buy more teachers. And next year, their city council is going to give them another $2 million. There's $10 million that we don't have to work with that they do, and I think that's unfortunate for our kids. But so the board, this was a very difficult decision for our school board, because they know right now it's tough out there. It's tough in their city and our outlying areas. We know that a lot of families are struggling. We know people are in jeopardy of losing their homes. Many have. So this is a very tough decision. I think it came down to where they felt like it was a moral imperative to go out and just at least ask the community, you know, tell them what our situation is and see if they wanted to assess themselves that local option levy, and that would produce about $2 million for us, and that would basically, the money scheduled to reinstate the 10 instructional days that are due to be cut. We'd still have 10 other days that our staff would not be working. By the way, 10 furlough days equates to about a 5% pay cut for our employees. So right now, just with the furlough days, they're scheduled for a 10% pay cut. So that's where we are, and I just stop there and ask if you have any questions about the school district in general, the local option, or anything else. Okay, Paul? With Kathy.
PERS, how has it affected you this year?
It's taken a huge chunk of anything we could hope to have additionally from the state is being gobbled up by PERS. And, you know, it's such a mixed feeling talking about PERS because, I mean, I'm not going to get a big PERS benefit because I've been back in Oregon since 1998. So, but I mean, you know, when people think about PERS, I wish they would direct if there's anger, directed towards the state of Oregon or the PERS board or whatever, because our individual employees have no control over that. They're out there, and most of them, when they get hired, they don't even know there's a benefit to retiring. And so I always feel badly when it gets directed toward public employees or school teachers particularly. But it went up, I don't have the exact number, but I think it's costing us about another $2 million this coming year to fund the increase that we had to support PERS because of the big money they lost 2 years ago in the stock market.
This year is about $2 million.
It'll actually be for us. It'll be this coming school year, about $2 million additional expense to fund PERS.
Okay.
Yes, Kathy.
Well, I had probably a couple comments and questions. And my husband just got today in for his retirement. A little notice that, you know, it's in a critical state. So, you know, it's in a private, and he's not a public employee. Yeah. And nobody's going to make that difference. He can't go to the public and ask. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it sucks. So stop saving people.
Yep.
Okay. That being said, what about volunteers helping you?
We have a lot of volunteer support, and we can use every other personal support. We have over 3,000 volunteers on our rolls right now that
Is
assist
there
in
any way
school.
that you can promote it or show it or have it on a website or something that they can know what the procedures are? Because I'm sure they have to have background checks, I'm assuming, so that people will know what the procedure and how to get in contact.
We can do that. That'd be real easy to do. Thank you.
The
Good
next,
suggestion.
yeah, and then the other, because I mentioned a website. Is this on the website?
This presentation isn't, but there's a lot of, generally the information here, particularly on our spending and effort, is on the website, and it's fairly easy to access, I think.
Okay, then the last thing is the schools that aren't being used as schools anymore, Eastham, Berkeley, the high school. I mean, there are students from the high school that the public is paying for, through their taxes. Is there any way that something's worth enough money to lease and get a higher return? Sell?
Yeah, almost all of that space is being leased currently. Most of the, we're leasing the entire space at Park Place, and we're leasing well over half of the space at Eastham, and we're working very hard to get the rest of that leased. The old high school campus, we probably have, we're either using it or we're leasing that space out to our ESD for special education programs, or we have a charter high school, Oregon City Service Learning Academy, that we initiated, that is housed in the newer part of the building. And we have some office space in the lower part of the old building. The only part that's really not being used or leased is the upper 2 floors of the old building.
And who's maintaining them?
We maintain it.
It's taxpayers. There's not enough income coming to help maintain those.
Oh no! When we lease it, that's built into the leases. As far as there's a maintenance and a custodial fee that are assessed.
So that later down the line, there's not a levy because these have gone to rack and ruin. They're not earthquake.
We're keeping those. We're keeping them up to date with those. And I think that's one thing the community should be proud of, is that we have a regular roofing schedule for all our buildings, even the ones that aren't occupied right now completely, because we know that's a huge investment. At some point, and we have a long-range facility plan for like the next 20 years, because this community will again grow. And all of those buildings, all those assets are scheduled to be used depending on what level of student population we have.
So in other words, you now have to build another school or
Correct.
go back.
Correct.
And
We will have students in the old high school again. We will have students, regular K-12 or K-6 students in Park Place Elementary again. And we're scheduled to have K-6 students in Eastham again. So all that space we want to keep up to date, but in the meantime, we want to get as much income off it as we can. And that's a very good question. That's another thing. We should probably have like a Q&A or something on our website to let people know that, because I think we have been good stewards of those properties.
Thank you.
Larry's next.
Okay, Larry, thank you. I'll see you back here, so thank you.
One thing I want to commend you on the utilization of the high school. I'm a neighbor.
Oh, okay.
And it does my heart good to see that building used. And the other thing that my neighborhood would like to discuss is when we have the soccer fields and the baseball fields open and we have food concessions there, are those permitted? And are we leasing the space, or is there some way we can produce revenue off the soccer fields? Because I'm telling you, parents will put money up for that.
Yeah.
And
To tell you the truth, Larry, I'm not sure about the particulars of that. When we have non-school groups using our soccer field, for example, or our football field, the new with the new turf on it, they are paying a fee. Now, I don't know if that allows them to also use the concessions. I'm just not sure about the details.
So what we need to monitor is that those are permitted and that they're not a health concern.
Yeah.
The other
I can't
thing,
tell you that.
I got an email from Paul today, and with his help, I have a question. And we would like to invite the school district to our National Night Out You've talked about it?
Yeah, we talked about it. We talked about it in our cabinet meeting this morning.
Okay.
Paul's been in contact with some of our central office administrators, and we're working on that. August 2nd is a tough date for us because most of our staff is not, working at that time.
But we're not working either. We're gonna be there.
And I mean, they're just not available. I mean, they're not around this time. But we are going to try to encourage as many of our groups as we can, our band, our choir, our athletic programs, our community ed programs, and at least get a start with this and get some participation from the school district.
We think we're gonna have the girls lacrosse there because we did them a significant favor.
Yeah.
Our girls lacrosse team generated a $5,000 net income from the garage sale this weekend.
I donated things.
Now, that is one group that we have several teams at the high school that are totally self-supporting. They're sponsored by the district and by the high school, but they have to go out and earn their own funds. So, and they've done great. Was this 2 years in a row now that they've won the state championship and going for a third? So,
Yeah, it's more than that. It's like 5. Not in a row, but they've only lost it once.
Yeah. They're tough.
Great for next door neighbor, and we're just really proud of her.
Yeah, great.
We've got next in line is myself and William, and then Bill. Is anybody else going to have questions? Let us know so we can write you down up here. The question I had for you, Roger, is I read the editorial page of the Oregonian nearly every day. Okay, the most exciting section.
Right.
And I've been reading all about the Portland options and the pros and cons. And I know the Oregonian came out, I guess, for one of the options and against one of the
Or the
other
local
ones.
option against the bond issue.
Right. But the comments I keep hearing the most is that people don't seem to understand that is it why the schools keep coming back and asking for more money, and we're really short another couple million this year, and it keeps going, and the question keeps coming out, editorials. Is it because there's more students now? They keep hearing that schools are closing because there's not enough schools. And they keep wondering, is it PERS? Is it what? What is taking up more of that money each year? All those on fixed income saying they can't afford the higher taxes.
I mean, because it's Portland, let me just quickly explain what they're doing. They already have a local option in place. It's scheduled to go for a whole nother year, but they're going out a year early because they had a 5-year local option. You can go from 1 to 5 years. They got a 5-year local option. Next year would be their 5th year, so they can still collect money on that, but they felt like they needed to increase that, so they're going out early and asking for a little bump in their local option levy. Now, why they need that and stuff, I mean, you follow it as well.
Comparing it to Oregon City.
Yeah, with Oregon City, as with most districts in Oregon, we're actually going to get 2 years ago in the biennium, we were scheduled to get $6 billion in K-12 for the biennium. This year, our funding right now is the legislature, if you followed about 2 or 3 weeks ago, both houses voted to give schools $5.7 billion. So we already have a backslide in the amount of revenue coming to us. And then with anything that's going up in cost, whether it's energy or, I mean, like right now, we're looking at having to probably budget at least another $100,000 in our fuel costs for next year for our transportation system. Because this year we budgeted $3, and now next year we think we're going to have the budget at $4, or at least $5. And so anything like that that's going up, we just don't have any control over. We just, then it has to come out of the classroom or school days or wherever, because we still got to be running those buses.
So is that shortage?
And then PERS gobbled up a lot of our money too. Right?
The shortage coming from the state because so many people are still unemployed in the state and they're not getting the revenue that they expected to get.
State income tax is where we get their state gets most of their money. That's where most of our revenue comes from. And so when you're totally dependent on income tax, that's such a volatile tax. As soon as you have any kind of a drop in the labor force, boom, you cut it off immediately. Where in Washington, for example, with a state, with all their state sales tax, people may not have a job, but a lot of them still have some sort of an income, where it's workers' unemployment or their families, or, I mean, there's still some spending going on. So it's a little more elastic. It gets them through a little bit easier. So that's mainly it. The state revenues are down so sharply.
Is there a solution to it here in the state rather than always passing the options, which again goes on a lot of people who have fixed income?
I think, and I'm sure there's people that would disagree with me, and I don't want to be a politician. Well, I will be a politician tonight. I don't want to to be a lightning rod.
Be interested in hearing that.
But if we would have had a rainy day fund that was triggered into the help me out, somebody.
Refund, tax refund.
We being the state, not the
We being the state, not the school district, and then this would have, again, it would have been a dip, but it would have been a much more gentle dip and coming out of it. So it's just that volatile state revenue source that just really whacks any services. Anytime there's a decline in revenue, we just get hit almost immediately.
Okay.
William.
Well, actually, there's segues of many of those things. And for the listening audience, I'm William Gifford from the Hillendale Neighborhood Association. I don't know that you still have some more presentation to give. Is that correct? Or did you just pause this, or is this a logical?
That's about it as far as the formal presentation.
Because as I understand, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that you aren't allowed to advocate
That's exactly right.
for the local option levy.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think that people need to understand, that all you can do is present factual
Pretty much the
information.
facts. And as the school superintendent, the state law says that that's the case for me, 24 hours a day, 7
I
days a week.
understand that. I just wanted to be upfront with everybody that this is
Right.
not an advocacy presentation.
Right.
The second thing is that it surprised me because I didn't know that the local option, which is state legislation allowed that, can permit from 1 to 5 years. And I
Correct.
don't know that I heard you mention that this is a 3-year
This is a 3-year levy.
that's being proposed for Oregon State,
correct.
which is, okay, that's something else. Another thing, and this is sort of out of left field, but when you start talking about busing and so on and fuel costs, it's always sort of amazed me. I've thought about this for decades. I wonder why cities don't use school buses when the schools aren't using the school buses. I mean, for a transportation system.
We're allowed to lease our buses out and would do so if it would have to be a revenue source for us. We wouldn't want to do it and take a loss.
No, not to take
Yeah,
a loss.
we can lease them out.
It seems peculiar to me that the number of hours in a day, the school buses just sit there doing nothing.
Yep.
That if there was some sort of a,
I see them out at auto swap meets when they bring the school buses.
yeah, that type of a thing, in my college or something, and use it. The last thing that I wanted to ask, and it tied into something else that Tom was talking about, on that slide that you had about the sources of income,
Okay.
on that pie chart, like charts, 20% was what? Can you hop back to that
I'll
quickly?
back to it. Yeah, let's see if I can do this properly. No, that wasn't proper.
Oh, do it improperly. You're getting closer.
Right.
Not where do the dollar signs go? Where do the dollar signs come from? Oh, 29% come from local taxes.
Correct.
What type of local taxes?
Property taxes.
Property taxes. Twice as much come from income taxes. What I'm getting at, and you suspected I was going to get at something.
Sure. What is it?
What is it? What I'm getting at is, if there was more employment, there would be more income tax.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not necessarily more property tax, but there would be more
Or income tax.
income tax. It's just that I've heard sometimes a criticism of urban renewal districts that because they freeze property taxes, but if those districts are generating jobs, isn't that helping with the math here? As far as I understand,
That would help schools in general greatly. Because that would put more money into the state revenue source and we would receive more revenue.
You bring it back.
Now, see, I know that this is a really loaded conversation, but William's a friend, and so I can help. Yeah, but that's true.
I didn't talk to you about this before.
No, you did not. No, you did not.
This wasn't I just think that that's 60%.
Yeah.
That if there were more jobs, there would be more money.
We'll be in safe wasting.
There you go.
I'm waiting.
You have to look at this. You have to look at the state employment though, and not make sure that you're not taking jobs from someplace else. So when the net growth of jobs is neutral, no matter. So if you reach the Clackamas Town Center and you take all of their employees and bring them here, and we don't gain net employment across the state, you have not had one bit of gain. Period. In fact, the cost of it. This last year, urban renewal took $67 million away from the school districts. from the state school fund.
And here I am, right in the middle of this now.
Okay, moving right along. Put local on here, could you explain what that is, as long as we're on that chart?
Mainly fees that are charged for various events or activities, or, for example, if you pay to get in to see the high school football game, that money goes to the school district, not to the football team itself. But then money goes from it's all how we have to account for our funds. And then the district can allocate some money to the football team. But, so anyway, that's a lot of it. All right. Are we out here?
Bill?
They'll need a microphone.
Or speak loud.
No, even
Okay.
speaking loud, they won't pick it up. But when
Okay.
you listen to these things, please come up and use the mic.
Or there's one right there next to Ray. Sorry, Bill.
Or either one, yeah.
Or both. Our tax dollars don't cover a big system.
I have 3 questions, and I can give you
Is that on?
I don't think it's on.
I have 3 questions, Roger. Okay, again, my name is Bill Daniels, I represent the McLaughlin neighborhood. And the first 2 questions, the reason I question is I just like to know more information. I hear about ESD.
Okay.
And how that impacts
Excellent.
individual budget. And I know that there's been legislation proposed to limit or reduce or eliminate ESDs, salaries, and et cetera. And the second question, how do charter schools impact revenue for the school district? I'd like to hear the money that's lost or versus whether it's kids are going to school here, where it contains expenses that would be, seem to me, pretty much stay the same as teaching 15 kids or 20 kids. But anyway, I'd like to know the difference between that. And then the easiest question, the quickest one, is last. Or maybe it's not the easiest, but through all the budget cuts that we've seen proposed in the furlough days, how much is the administration share of that burden? The non-represented and the furlough as well?
Sure. Administration, yeah, and that's a fairly direct question and fairly easy to respond to. Our administrative team will take exactly the same number day cut as everybody else in the district, and they've taken the same cuts as far as our salary and benefits in the district. Did that answer all the administrative, the furlough? Okay. And then going to the ESD question, ESDs serve various roles no matter where they are, that kind of meet the needs in general of the districts they're serving. For us, the main need that the ESD provides us is in special ed services. And I can tell you that I think I can confidently say that every one of the 10 superintendents in Clackamas County do not want to see a change in the funding or the structure of our ESD. And there may be beefs with other ESDs, but we feel like our ESD serves us well, and especially with our ESD or our special ed populations. Other question was related to charter schools. Oregon City School District has initiated 2 charter schools ourselves, and those were to provide additional options for particularly our high school students. We have Oregon City Service Learning Academy, which is housed in the newer part of the old high school, and we have about 100 students there. And then we have the Clackamas Academy of Industrial Science that just started this year, that is and really started with a lot of support and actually direct monetary support from a lot of our industry in the area. Benchmade Knives is a big player in that school. Miles Fiberglass is a big player. I can't think. Pioneer Pump. That's a big contributor and player. Those people all serve on that board of directors. So try to give a little different approach to high school education. And those basically are, they're just break-even things. You know, we can manipulate the revenue and fund it, not the revenue so much, but we can charge more for their school space. I mean, so we can really control the revenue and expenditures in those schools. The other 2 schools we have are Springwater, what do they call them? Springwater Environmental Academy, I think it is. Now that, when we are in the declining, and I need some charts and everything, but basically when we're in a declining enrollment environment like we've been in the last 5 or 6 years, the loss of those students hurts our bottom line. So I'd be wrong to say otherwise. I think it's a great option for kids out there, but it does hurt our bottom line. Alliance Charter Academy, ACA, that is currently housed in Park Place Elementary School, actually is a revenue generator for us, because over 50% of those students come from outside the school district. You know, you don't need a release or anything. If you're going to a charter school, anybody can attend that charter school. And so when we have an elementary student come in, most of the students at ACA are elementary students. When we have an elementary student enroll there, that school gets 80% of the funding. But if it's a student from Tigard or North Clackamas or whatever, it's just kind of the funding flows in there. And the school district gets to keep 20% of the funding. That's where we generate revenue from that school. So all in all, when you look at the two district-initiated and the two other initiated from outside sources, pretty much a break-even operation for our charter schools. Now, I just want to clear up, too, that when we have if somebody comes into a school district and says, we want to start a charter school, we have to entertain their application. We have to go through some guidelines for approval that are given to us by the state. And in some cases, our hands are tied. Because if we deny the charter, then the state law says they can go to the Department of Education and ask them to charter them. Now, the only difference is instead of getting 20% of the revenue, we only get 10% now. And so you're kind of like, oh, man. So charter schools, I mean, it's not always what it might seem like. Why are they doing all these charter schools? Sometimes their hands are tied on these sorts of things. And unless we have a really good reason to deny the charter, and there are reasons in state law you can do that, you're better off to approve it and get as much money out of it as you can. Okay? Mm-hmm. We do.
Okay.
That about it?
Yep.
That's going to be it.
We've gone over time on that one. We'll have one last question because we're...
Bruce Danielson, Rivercrest. One question on PERS, because I think it's going to go up every year. And my question is, there's Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. When Tier 1 works its way through the system and
all that group of people
are not only retired, but unfortunately gone, will that stop the continuing increase?
Yeah, the legislation that was passed was early this millennium, like 2002 or 3 in that biennium, really took a lot of the problems that were in the current system and really created what amounts to much more of a 401k-like system that won't have these built-in escalators and stuff. If the market goes down, your account goes down. Market goes up, your account goes up. So as those people leave and as they pass on, thank you. Then yes, the rates will go down. And if the market stays up and is healthy, then that'll dampen the rates also.
What's the projection on a timeline that this is going to take?
I haven't seen that.
Are we looking at $2 million increases for 10 years?
No, I think actually next year, if I think the next biennium, they're predicting almost a flat rate. So this is the big jump. They're not allowed by state law to smooth anything out. They have to go every biennium. They have to make adjustments based on what happened the previous biennium. And so that's where we're getting hit with this really big one right now. That's because of the market increases. In the first place, so I apologize, but I spent a lot of time with William. So
you were exaggerated. Actually, we didn't know there was going to be any presenters tonight, so we thought we'd get everybody out of here by 8. Anyway, thank you, Roger. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
And seriously, we hadn't planned on having too many speakers tonight. We know when Denise had asked us about coming up and talking to us. So we're kind of a little bit behind our plan schedule. Let's get Denise up next so she can move on with her schedule too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Denise, while you're coming up here, I got an application, land use application that says the McLaughlin neighborhood. I'm not sure if you probably got it as well. let's see, the file number on there is, I'm looking for CU 11-01 conditional use. You got it, and you're responding to it, okay? Okay. Good, then I don't need to do that. Okay, no, fine. Be glad to let the neighborhood do it. Okay, any idea about length so he can put it? Okay.
Lisa Griffin, I live in the McLaughlin neighborhood, but I'm not here representing the neighborhood. I'm here to propose a concept to you all that after some research and thinking about this for quite some time, I wanted to propose to you a concept that I hope you would consider endorsing, that we talk to the City Commission about creating a community-based urban renewal plan. And the reason that I'm suggesting this is that a few months back I got, at our office, we get a copy of the Daily Journal of Commerce, the DJC, and an interesting article in it about the City of Beaverton and the urban renewal plan process, and it got me thinking. A different way of looking at something, it's a completely unique, but not totally novel idea. And basically the reason that I think that we ought to support something like this is, number one, you know, the City Commission adopts goals every year, and lo and behold, goal number 5 that they have has to do with increasing citizen involvement. And what better way to get the community involved in what our urban renewal plan is going to be than have it be a community-based plan? The reason that I am really suggesting this is that over the years I've lived in this community, now 22 as of last month.
Coos County.
Yeah, Coos County. Oregon City has a reputation out there in the hinterlands as a community that has a lot of potential. I guess, frankly, I'm tired of hearing that because we have moved forward with fulfilling our destiny and some of our potential. But I think that we need to stop being reactive and be proactive. And wouldn't it be great? I just finished getting copies. This is part of their plan. I'm not saying that, and I haven't finished reading it all, I'm not saying that we have to produce a big giant plan, but I think that the City of Beaverton is on the right track in terms of getting their community behind what they want to do. They now have a plan that they can go to people or to developers or whoever it is and says, here's our plan. This is what our community wants. If you can fit into that plan, we would love to have you in our community. And I think that that is a real boon to the City of Beaverton. Now, it just so happens that the new Community Development Director at the City of Beaverton is a gentleman who used to be the Executive Director of the agency that I work for. So I figured, why not go right to the top? So I emailed him a few weeks ago and I asked him about the process, and he basically sent back just a little bit of information and said, go look at our website, which I did. He said that the vision for this particular plan was the first step. It was followed by a civic plan, and then they had a draft urban renewal plan, and it will be adopted. Now, they've done all this within a period of a year. I don't think that we would need to take that long, because their community plan is actually for the whole community, and I'm talking about starting with this, our urban renewal plan, and making that a community-based plan. And he said that the urban renewal plan was still in draft, so of course that's the thing that I read first, because I was really interested in that. And it's not very long, it's pretty simple, and I'm going to go back and read it a second time just so I can understand what they're saying, and I can call him back up and ask him some more questions. So that's really my idea, and I don't think I'm the creator of this idea. Just after reading that article and doing more research for the last couple of months, part of what I had to do for my job was to look into this a little more. Just sort of, I said, well, I'm going to come and talk to you all about this. I don't have all the answers about how to do it, but we have other people who've been through it, and hey, let's not reinvent the wheel, let's just steal liberally whatever we need to. But I think it's something that would help our community in a very long way, in a very good way, and it would be more inclusive, it would be participatory, and I think after all, that's what this group is all about, and I support very strongly this group, and I'm glad it's been reactive. That's everything I wanted to say.
William has a question, then I do.
So you have another 11 minutes to talk. But, thanks for bringing this to us, and I'm very interested in finding out more about this. I imagine there's like an executive summary of what they have done. I'm guessing. And where could we get a copy of that?
And that was my question. I was
Sorry,
no, that's good.
The pieces that I have with me are the community vision. Then they have a community vision that has, it's a plan appendix, so it has, for instance, has actions and then notes about, so for instance,
That's too much detail.
yeah, that's what they have. Then they have a civic plan, which is their central city strategy.
But Denise, was there no documentation as about how they developed this?
There are some other areas of information. Then they have a land use and transportation strategy, and then, like I said, housing and neighborhood. And then they have the draft, we call it the BUR, instead of ours is the OCUR. But I did not see anything that was an executive summary. I did see some other things which are still in my briefcase, which talk about sort of what the process was,
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
kind of how, but they have a contact person. There was on the back, okay, here's one of the things. They talked about how were the strategies developed. They talked about here in the summary, just a technical phase, what they did, a development phase, a refinement phase, and an implementation phase. And this was like August of 2010, September to January 2011, February, April 2011.
And is there an electronic version of that?
This is where all this came from.
So that's what I was going to ask.
That's where
If you
I'm
go to
kind of leading.
Beaverton and look at their,
Is there a link that you could send out to this body or to Chris or one of us so we could send it out? I mean, it sounds great, but I have no idea what this is all about or the ramifications or what really is a result of it. And I think everyone here would like to understand it.
just go to the city of Beaverton's webpage.
Yeah, we'll find it.
And I'll link out to everybody
I'll
here.
find it.
Yeah, and I think
Okay,
then
one
that
sec.
way we would know who was
I'm
the
not there.
facilitator.
Oh, he's not in it.
There was a listing of who the facilitator was, and there was a whole, the thing that I did not print, which was about 200 pages, was their community involvement section. And this apparently every comment that everybody had ever made, and I sort of scanned through it quickly, and I said, okay, I gotta read that. That's another comment.
So Lou's last question.
I'm not saying this is the end all, but it is an example of a community that has done this, that's far larger than we are, and believe me, there's not, I mean, if you ask me about Beaverton off the record, I may say.
No, you're televised here, yeah.
Just to interject here, I'm apologizing to everyone
So
that we
we're
normally,
asking you to
I'm apologizing to everyone that normally this is a little bit more organized. We have a button we can push to speak, but because the first speaker, Roger, and then also Denise were not on our agenda, well, there's nothing we can push to say that who's going to speak next.
Okay.
So that's why let him finish, and then push your cards up.
Were you planning on making this presentation to either the planning, to the Urban Renewal Commission or to the City Commission?
Well, this isn't the presentation.
Okay.
This is just me
Suggesting.
making suggestion that this group would be the natural group to say to the city
Oh, yes, I hear you.
and
Okay.
other organizations saying, gee, why don't we look into having a process like this? Why don't we
Thank you.
have a community-based and community-supported urban renewal plan? That's the question.
Yep.
Well, and I'm thinking that in this process, that we don't need to hire a consultant and pay money out, that with the knowledge we have within the community and getting the right person to facilitate, that we could save the money too and present them with something. I like the idea.
Any process like this is gonna cost dollars. I'm not suggesting that it isn't gonna cost anything.
Well, but it doesn't have to, if it's done,
You're getting into detail. I'm
Yeah.
not asking
This
you to
is-
get to that level of detail.
Yeah, because 200 pages photocopy is going to cost a lot.
This is a concept that I'm suggesting that we pursue. As not only as this organization, but I'm going to bring it up to my neighborhood association. I don't have a planning commission meeting until next week. It is something that I will ask them about as well. At the end of our meeting, we have a couple of hearings that night.
I like the idea too.
Paul.
Denise, thank you very much for bringing this forward, and I really think it would be an immense value. To me, we've talked about town halls many times, and I've been an advocate of the idea of having town halls to correctly vision in an open forum, and believing that the CIC would be an excellent entity to do this. And I understand that the the convener person, I have been already been aware of this program that they brought in to Beaverton really helped make this happen. They brought a professional in to help guide this whole process through, and it worked in Beaverton, you know, where we should be able to really fly compared to the.
Thank you for saying that, because I didn't want to say it.
You know, and they had to solve the round and lots of other issues that are associated with Beaverton that we don't need to worry about. And so they really have real serious problems. And the beautiful thing out of this, the story as it goes on, the way I've been informed, was it brought consensus in the city about direction. And I said, wow, you could bring consensus in Beaverton?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That's really probably the bottom line is the whole idea of consensus. Everybody's not going to get their way, and we all know that the rule of citizen involvement, everybody has the opportunity to be heard, but not everyone gets their way. Everyone joins together for the benefit of the whole. And we have some property here at the end of town that deserves to be community supported, rather than us reacting to somebody saying something in the paper or elsewhere about what they want to do. It's all about what we as Oregon City community members want for our community. And I think whatever that result is, if it's community-based, it's going to be fantastic. So that was really it. So it's something that I hope you'll bring up on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, now on to item number 3, back to our agenda. Approval of minutes, and William, you're on.
May I make the announcement that I suggested that you make? Here's my dilemma. I spend too much time writing up the minutes. There's a lot that goes on in these meetings. One of the reasons that we moved to City Hall was so that we could have all of these minutes recorded, all the detail, all the conversation, all the opinions. They're documented, they're live, they're stored in perpetuity. We're gonna have all the detail of every comment that's ever made in these rooms. And I cannot afford in my own life to be spending the hours that I spend doing the detailed minutes of these. So it seems to me as though I know that the legal requirements of minute taking is, who was there, when was the meeting convened, where was it held, and were there any motions? And that's what I'm proposing doing, so that we can go back and have a hard copy record of what motions were made, who made them, and so on. I'm not planning on taking detailed notes of everybody's opinions. If that doesn't work, then I think that I would have to resign as secretary. I think there's a lot other things that I do for the CIC besides just taking notes, but that's what I'm proposing. And so I'm suggesting, and I'm not taking detailed minutes tonight, that if anybody wants to use the argument of that the minutes are something that they like to take back to their neighborhoods, my suggestion is take notes yourself and take the things that are important or that you consider important to your neighborhood back to your neighborhood. Does that sound like a reasonable approach? Okay. We have a few sets of minutes to go through then. We have last month's and we have the month before that. On the month before that, there was an issue regarding what was going on in Park Place. And I didn't feel it was worth the CIC's time to get into the details of what all was happening in Park Place Neighborhood Association. And so I just made a comment about the fact that there was some reactivation going on, well, some reorganization or something. I can't remember what the phrase words that I used on it. But there was a concern that there needed more detail in that. And Tom Guile has provided more detail for that. And I think that you've all had an opportunity to see the email. We had the copies of the minutes in there, and if not, they're right in front of you. But the very first copy of the minutes that you have there on the bottom of page 3, in red, are the notes that Tom Giles supplied. I have a concern about these particular notes. I didn't talk to you about it. I'm sorry. That it's a little one-sided the other way. I was trying to be neutral about it, but this is pretty one-sided on one way.
And I thought I was being totally neutral, because what you had was that Steve was talking about the re-energizing the community, and that's not at all what he spoke about. I was the one who was talking about what we were doing. But this was a very brief conversation. I was just getting, I could have gotten into more detail because there was some raised voices, but he wanted to make sure that he was clarifying that this wasn't an apology to the community, it was to the city council or to the office for getting them involved, and the rest of it was just as brief as I could get.
Well, there are words such as flouting. Flouting is inappropriate.
And I wasn't even referring to Steve. It just said that we talked about Steve and Park Place interim chair exchange views on the inappropriateness of flouting existing PP&A laws. That does not say Steve. It just says that there was some.
I understand the passive voice. I'm just suggesting that that amount of detail is possibly not necessary, especially since there was no mention in there of the fact that there had been months when there was not PPNA meeting called.
But that wasn't the issue of the conversation. The conversation is about going by the bylaws and following those.
But isn't it part of the bylaws to hold meetings?
It is, and that's why the chair resigned and I took over as interim chair to make sure those things happen. And we've now addressed that in our bylaws that were approved by our steering committee 7-3.
Well, I consider these comments still one-sided and are too much detail. And I would suggest, I would like to have a motion that this amount of detail is removed from the minutes and go back to the previous minutes. Oops, there's a second. Okay.
Right. So I was trying to capture the fact that the conversation that I didn't want to occur here, I wanted to discuss it back at Park Place, but Steve wanted to discuss it here and open. And all I was trying to say is there was some bylaws that were broken and meetings were called without the whole Park Place steering committee being formed, and that conversation went back and forth, and I felt it was important that we know it was documented what that conversation was here before you. It went on 5-10 minutes, and this was just a brief explanation. I'd be glad to use another word other than flouting, but I think the conversation was around that entire subject that evening.
And yet, if someone wanted that detail, of course, they could watch the.
Well, in this particular minutes, we got all the other details of everything else. It's just in the future, I thought we were doing the details. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so about the rest of all these minutes.
Brevity. Right.
Then none of these make sense. We wouldn't want to vote on any of this because this is all detailed. To throw out the comments of that interchange and not the rest of these minutes doesn't make sense. Just to toss out mine, because there were several people at the last meeting who said we should have that collected and put in there what happened at the meeting. I wasn't the only one.
Well, there was a motion made last month about this previous month's minutes.
Can I ask you one question? Who was that one word put in here by you?
I did when I was writing. I couldn't find another way of saying breaking the laws or whatever. I just used the word flouting. So I didn't want to use the word illegal or breaking. So I said flouting.
There is another probably phrase for saying of not following the bylaws.
Okay.
Something.
And we could say not following instead of flouting.
I understand what you're saying. The issue that I'm saying is that these comments are all on. They do not address the reason why the meeting was called, even though it was inappropriate or flouted or against the law or a mortal sin. why the meetings had not been called.
I understand that, but on my computer, I couldn't watch that thing. You think you take a long time, dial-up takes even 10 times longer. To come here and get a copy, I'm on a fixed income, I'm not gonna come get a copy. So, I like having minutes. When I was doing a land use for a group of people in Filbert Run, in Hazel Grove, about a Filbert Run, a project, Ed Sullivan made sure I had my minutes and they had everything. Otherwise, they wouldn't have listened to me, and I've seen them reject somebody's appeal because they didn't have the minutes and everything. So I think we have to be more careful on what we're putting in there and how we word it. But we need to represent something more of the things that go on. You don't have to go, verbatim, but when there is an argument and an issue that comes down the road, if you don't do something, do it. And you want to appeal it or you want to go to somebody, it's not going to get listened to.
And for my part, I wanted to clarify here, like I said, several people did who read the minutes, that it really didn't clearly address what had taken place in the exchange, and I wanted it for the record of what not exactly, but what I had said to all of you and what I had said to Steve that evening, and this was the briefest way I could think of saying it. If we want to change the word flouting to not following, that's fine with me, but that was what the conversation was about, and to me, that's part of the roundtable discussion. Yes.
Suggestion on that sentence?
Yes.
That it be shortened even a little bit more, just to say that Steve and Park Place Interim Chair Tom Dial exchanged views about calling the meeting without informing the majority of the steering committee. Because that whole keeping name bylaws to me got really confusing anyway, and I would just suggest that just about calling.
Rewording, yeah.
So I would be willing to take that as long as the rest of it stays. Stephen Park Place Interim Chair Tom Dial exchanged views about calling PPNA, about calling a meeting without informing the majority of the steering committee. You all follow that? Exchange views about calling a meeting without informing the majority of the steering committee. Dial explained to the CIC membership that he would be addressing the breach of bylaws internally at the next steering committee meeting, which we've done, and that bylaw changes to protect from this occurring again would be on the agenda. This was so heavily talked about amongst the communities and neighborhood associations. That's why I wasn't going to address it at that meeting, but when Steve brought it up, I felt it was necessary to address it and tell all of you that we were taking care of it in Park Place. So.
Just one more thing, too.
Yes.
I guess I would suggest that there's probably a little. To me, there is more detail in this paragraph than there is in the remaining bullets that the secretary wrote out. But in this situation, additional detail is requested.
And the reason is that this was kind of most roundtable is just a report of what's happening. This was a discussion that was carried on, and I think that's why, again, a couple other people here asked for a bit longer explanation of what had transpired. But I'm willing to take off the Tom Dial exchange views instead about calling a meeting without informing this, and that should be a general meeting. Okay, there was a yes.
Just wanted to make a comment in support of William Monday. And that's correct. The most important thing is we need to record is what we should do with the pen, or to tell the meeting, and then the action items that were approved for motion and vote. Everything else is, unless it's to edify what that motion was about, is really irrelevant if it wasn't voted on. It was just discussion. And what William can do, as he has always done so well, is to bullet point some of the significant discussions that go on. But I don't feel like he needs to be this thorough about everything he said. If I came in a red dress and everybody liked it and said it liked it, I wouldn't expect it to prove the thing. So we just have to remember
What's pertinent. And then going forward, since someone seemed to complain about that or say, no, William, that's the way it is going forward. Right now, I guess we should finish up about the March minutes. And there was a motion on the floor.
A second on the floor.
And a second, who seconded it?
Ray seconded.
Okay.
And so we should vote to, I guess, are we voting to accept these as they were originally written, or would they change? As they were originally written, there's a vote.
Or you can withdraw your motion and make a new one.
The motion was,
No, this
was
this
for
is
the original meeting, and I'm sorry we don't have a copy of the original minutes here.
The original minutes says Steve Van Herbeek, he had written in there, had addressed about the reinvigorating or something of the Park Place. That's not what took place. And that wasn't a motion.
That's not a motion.
Okay. That was just the fact that that's what he's going to do in the future. Right now, we're talking, do we accept these minutes? And I guess, can I make a motion? As the
You
chair?
can entertain a motion.
I'd like to entertain a motion that we accept them with a correction that I just
So moved.
came from
So moved. Yeah.
Nancy.
Nancy.
So, you know, the fact that somebody could, consolidate it
This would be a lot easier. These are all words and people.
This was a unique situation. I've never questioned minutes
I
before.
so moved. Do we have a second?
Did somebody second?
Who's second? Walter?
Walter. So those in favor of accepting the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I'll abstain.
Okay.
Steve abstain.
Okay.
Alice, I want to thank you for your comments. Thank you.
All right. So we've approved the minutes as amended.
That one. Now we have April.
They were too long. I couldn't get through them.
I rest my case.
I did get through them.
I'm just kidding. Okay, and I believe you're up. Let's see here. So, do we have the discussion before we make the motion?
No, we have a motion first and then.
We have the motion. Somebody like to make a motion that we accept these minutes?
I move that we accept these minutes.
Do I hear second?
Second.
Okay, and now just discussion.
On page 3, under, report, the last sentence,
CIC report. Where are you on page 3?
on page 3,
CSE retreat. Oh, sorry. Would be explored further at next month's meeting.
So we have to teach him
Thank you.
journalism.
Yes. Would be explored.
Okay. And now, Tom.
Yes, on page 2, second paragraph, approval of minutes, states that Vice Chair Hanlon moved and O'Brien seconded that the minutes be approved as written. My concern regarding the minutes has always been and continues to be that I don't care whether the minutes are captured and recapped or not, but if they are, they should be accurate, because it is a record that is going to be seen 50 years from now if necessary. And this record is totally inaccurate. I will point out why. As I read that statement, when I received the minutes, I thought, wait a minute, I wasn't even in the room. How could I have seconded? So I went back and I looked at the video, which I know William does as well when he writes the minutes. I was certain I was not in the room, and so I looked at it in a sequential standpoint. At 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 31 seconds, I'm shown on video as leaving the room. At 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 47 seconds, agenda item 8 is introduced by Chair Giles. 1 hour, 15 minutes, and 17 seconds, Secretary Gifford states that he cannot move to accept. Larry Hamlin then accepted. 1 hour, 15 minutes, 22 seconds, Secretary Gifford confirms that Hamlin accepted
and that Paul Edgar seconded.
Sorry, the voice.
So you write it down. I wrote it on the video, you see him writing down, Paul Edgar, and yet I'm supposed to have said it, and I'm out of the room.
This is too many
And
people in this.
I don't understand.
It's a
If we're going to keep minutes on motions,
I agree.
then we ought to be accurate with what we're doing.
And because we're all humans, sometimes we make a mistake. And I'm sorry that I put your name in there, and that should have been Paul Edgar seconded, and then both the motion and the second were withdrawn.
What happened at 1 minute 16?
I thank you.
I don't care whether minutes are kept. I don't feel that it's necessary. That's why we moved here.
I have a question. How about if the record is the video, and if you have any questions about it, address it at the next meeting and say,
I'm not gonna watch it the next
The
meeting.
concern with the video is twofold. Number one, not everyone in the city can view that video
Yes.
because of technology restrictions. Number two, I repeatedly watch videos of events that are going on within meetings in the city. And in many instances, the speaker who's being recorded is unable to be heard either because of poor enunciation or their microphone is turned off, or they're facing here when they're talking and the microphone is there.
I can have a soft voice.
There are numerous occasions when that recording is insufficient in my mind.
okay, you might that.
So I think William's got the right answer. We'll have the minutes on, that are available on there, but also he'll record the higher level. At least we'll have that documentation.
I guess our secretary, is it possible that if you want to put a record of motions, that you be able to watch that portion of the video anyway and maybe put it in as it was recorded?
Yes.
Thank you.
Tom, I can't possibly describe how sorry I am that I accidentally made a mistake and put your name down.
Well,
I just
it's not the first time that I've been recorded as having done something or said something that was not an accurate reflection of the actual statement. And I'm concerned about that.
All this is coming together. Exactly what we need to move into the 2011 century about this, right? I mean, everyone's making the same points, but we're all kind of acting like we're not. We all agree that we're in a room that the city spent a lot of money on to do exactly what we need to do, which is to stop expecting somebody to handwrite everything. It's just not going to happen anymore. And exactly why you said you wouldn't do it is because none of us want to do that stuff.
Very good point.
Time for it, and that's why we're all spending all these millions to have this. So here we are. And I think we're all at the same point. Right? We just make a motion that this is what we're going to do from now on.
Well, let's go ahead and approve these minutes first for April, and then move into that.
And then, because I think this would have happened if we had done this 2 or 3 months ago, right? Then we wouldn't have had to worry about that.
Possibly.
We would have missed that name because we wouldn't have worried about this paragraph. We would have both for it.
There's also creative ways that we talk about, offline, like somebody, 10 minutes,
Could you use a microphone?
Otherwise, people don't allow enough. Or you have, interns that need to get credit and stuff, so that could, there's really creative ways that we get about it. And then we don't talk about here, but.
I think Tom's point there was the fact that if you don't talk into the microphone, they're not going to. Yeah, I gather that. I'm not sure, Chris, if these microphones broadcast here and those other ones pick it up for the air time or not. Those ones that don't appear to be working, these may be because they want them to speak to the public. Okay. All right. Well, let's go forward because here we are again at 25. I call the question for the vote on approving these minutes as amended.
Other microphones.
As amended.
As amended. Correcting Tom's there.
Paul made the motion and Larry seconded
So
it.
all we're doing now is calling the vote. All those in favor of accepting these minutes with the amended comment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstained?
Aye.
Who said that? Okay, all right. All right. With that, do we need a motion for you to be doing that, since that was what the understanding was when we moved here? I don't think so. Let's move forward.
Made that motion in September.
Okay.
2010.
All right. Now for the 2.5-hour presentation by Nancy Kreshower.
Thank you for your patience.
I'll make sure my microphone is test. They're really, they tend to be pretty subtle, so they might still be. Okay, so I've got a list here of things that I want to mention to the group. One thing that you should be aware of is that we're prepping for the slurry seals and summer paving right now. We have not completed our maps yet because we're still inventorying and trying to figure out how we can spend our money the most wisely. But you will be, probably by next month's meeting, I will be able to bring a map showing where the paving is going to be occurring and the slurry seals. And then something new this year on the slurry seals is that a problem we've had in the past is when people aren't keeping their street trees limbed up adequately, and then if the slurry seal machine goes in there, or the street sweeper, whatever, it doesn't usually matter with the street sweeper, but with the slurry seal machine, if the truck is higher than the street tree, it knocks up limbs, leaves, etc., and then that ends up in the slurry seal, and that is a bad product. So what we've devised this year, our street supervisor is generating a door hanger, and we'll be sending it out several weeks in advance, asking people to trim their trees up. And then another reminder.
Isn't city ordinance 10 feet?
Yes, it is. And actually, I think we're going to change the ordinance because that was a good thing, but some of the newer equipment is higher than that. So, and the ordinance will not have a change. If you might go ahead and put 12 feet on the door hanger.
Can I ask a question about that too? That came up in our neighborhood, which is a new neighborhood. Most of the trees don't even have enough growth on them yet they told us if we didn't cut them, they were going to cut them.
Well, I think the point to make is that once they start, when they're first planted and they're small, they're kind of like this, and they don't even hang over your street or your sidewalk. And then when they get bigger, they start to do, and that's where, we don't expect you to necessarily clip it at the branch that's down here at 4 feet, but maybe just trim around what's actually hanging on the street.
So we're trying to get them to grow.
Absolutely, right. So we understand that.
Thank you.
We talked about that. You'll be seeing those door hangers. We're trying to do, this is part of the commission's goals for better public information, is to get, to let you know, oh, by the way, we need the street trees pruned up if we're doing slurry seals. It also gives an opportunity to let that neighborhood know that they are going to have slurry seal treatment, and to start thinking about that long ahead of when it's actually done. The other thing I had to mention is that this isn't really about public works, but it is about the elevator, and that's run by public works. So, but I don't know, how many of you are members of AAA? Well, did anybody read their VIA magazine when they get it? Okay. Well, this is so exciting. On page 18, under On the Road, Reader's Favorite Thrilling Overlooks and Vistas, here we are, the Oregon City Municipal Elevator. It says, Oregon City, Oregon, right up to see Willamette Falls in all their glory, says Alice Duff of Portland. You can also view the falls from a bluff nearby. And then it has a reference, phone number, etc. So that was really exciting.
I wonder who Alice Duff is.
They interviewed from Portland. So that was just, that's just great marketing for Oregon City and our really awesome elevator. Which, speaking of which, I don't have the exact date, but we will be doing the extended hours for the summer again like we did last summer. That was a really highly successful endeavor, and it was for a nominal cost. Well worth it. Well, all right, they'll go till 9:30 on Wednesday through Saturday. And I'm going to send Chris verification of that, because it's not the steel of scrap I like to have up there.
Okay, Ingrid, where is
So we will send out, I will send Chris a verification of the summer hours.
Okay.
Then the other thing that you might want to know about is that the bridge shuttle is quite successful for the bridge closure. Since January 15th, it's had about 5,600 riders, about 600 bikes. All of those are expected to go up with the better weather months, and they are actually filling the vans many hours a day. So they're proposing to, right now it goes every 40 minutes.
School buses.
No, that's exactly right, yes, the school buses.
Well, they're using school bus drivers to are driving the vans, so, so rather than every 40 minutes, starting as of today, it will be going every 30 minutes. So it'll be leaving West Lynn on the hour and a half hour, and it'll be leaving Oregon City right down there in front of the U.S. Bank downtown at the 15 and the 45 of the hour. So it's a pleasant little trip. And very reliable. The next thing is,
I was for, you still have a question? Okay.
the next thing I wanted to just give you a quick update. Some of you already are probably aware of this, but we were asked to present information about street trees and sidewalks, etc., to the Caulfield Association of Neighbors, and it's very much a multi-departmental effort, and there's different processes for different things. And so what we decided to do was get together the staff, both the street division, public works kind of the director of the planning department, code enforcement, all of which are involved in somewhere or another with street trees and sidewalk maintenance. And a lot of this is in direct response to the request we've gotten from the South End neighborhood, and I think it was with Westland Farms to, what are we going to be doing about all these cracked sidewalks? So we thought, for starters, we would try to put together information about what the current code and policies are, practices are for maintaining street trees and dealing with sidewalks. So what we're going to do is put together a PowerPoint presentation that Pete Walters will be giving at the July 26th Caulfield Neighborhood Association. And then it'll be of a nature then, the next meeting, which will be the first meeting in August, I'll do it at the CIC. And then from there, you can get it from Chris to take it to your own neighborhoods. If you have questions about it, just dialogue with us on the email or whatever, and we can continue to answer that. And that way we'll have at least the information out there. And then from there, if there's things that we want to see changed, or if we have to raise money to make changes, to do different things, we can start with the ground, sort of the basic information that is available to the population as a whole. I just thought I'd let you know about that, because we understand, and there's actually been changes in the code over the years, so that we think the code is much, much better now than it used to be, and we're hoping that some of these problems and concerns that various neighbors have and citizens have may not repeat themselves in the future because of improvements to the code itself.
Nancy, since South End and Hazel Grove Farms brought up the issue initially, and it's a major concern for us in our neighborhoods, one of the things that we had thought about was that the trees selected may not be the improper trees, but rather the depth at which they were planted, being too close to the surface, thereby having surface roots lifting all the sidewalks. Is there consideration being given in your committee as you work on this to require the developers to plant those at sufficient depth that they don't continue to create problems?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that we specifically discussed, and that is to have a planting standard for not only constructing with a certain depth, but also to put in root barriers. We will require root barriers be installed when there are street tree plantings by developers. We already do it on public projects, so we have a drawing of detailed street trees. So that'll be a new requirement. Even when you're replacing, if you have to replace a tree, we'll be requiring the individual to use root barriers as well. I think that's a great, I mean, root barriers are a great way to help control the roots and have them start getting down, and then they get a certain depth and they go out. Much less harmful to the sidewalk.
Is there any thought being given if additional costs are being placed on the property owner to get some financial assistance from the city to put in these barriers and replace the trees that have already damaged so many sidewalks in the area? Because we're exposing very high costs to hire a concrete contractor to come in and replace the concrete, and the trees just lift the second sidewalk out of place.
There have been conversations. One thing I can tell you that we've done for the last 2 or 3 years is when you have to do work in the right-of-way, you have to come get a right-of-way permit. And for these kinds of situations where you're replacing sidewalk, replacing street tree, the right-of-way permit has been really for 2 or 3 years, we made it half the normal price to help provide some sort of a break. Other types of charging and the city paying and this and that really are not something that right now we do not have a revenue source for that kind of a thing. So that's kind of discussion I'm hoping would occur after we provide to you what the current code requires, what are the current regulations, what's the current process, current practices, current policies. And then at that point, then any kind of discussion can happen about changes that people would want made, or certainly revenue streams are a hot topic, and there's a lot of other things that need funding in the city, and that's when the citizens and the city commission have to set priorities for how much do we go for when.
It would be nice to consider, especially in light of the fact that we are accustomed to occasionally eliminating altogether CDCs in some instances. I think that permitting fees and the like could be
waived. You're talking about SDCs?
SDCs, excuse me. I'm thinking that permitting fees and so forth might be possibly waived. If the evidence is there that supports the fact that this homeowner is obligated to replace something that wasn't done correct to start with.
Again, the city commission is the only body that can waive fees. We've reduced the fees by half for these situations in an attempt to be a little understanding of the costs. But all of that kind of discussion really should happen after everybody understands. I think that's the best approach. And we will have it in July, the first meeting in August here, and then it'll be ready to, go national. We'll have very national.
I just like the city staff to be thinking in terms of if someone were to pose this to the city commission, that in fact we could have the staff stand behind that option.
It's tough for us to stand by an approach to waive fees because that's what pays our salaries to do permits.
Yeah, I know.
I think there's got to be another way of funding.
Can I ask how much more you have on your agenda to talk about?
Not much.
Okay, only because we're 20 to 9 and we're going to have to cut off a lot of things off this because of the questions that have been happening tonight throughout the evening. But let's go right now to Ingra, and we're going to reduce this agenda.
Some of this conversation actually should be done after.
Walter, and then Kathy.
So Nancy, we're going to get who's on your committee? You're using the code enforcement?
Code enforcement, public works, and planning. Okay, and then next.
Well, hold on, we have another question, Walter.
I was going to say, Tom, by the way, we have the same issue already happened in Barker Hills 2 years ago in American Mule Ridge Estates, where they fell and broke a face or something, and then all of us had to do all of this. And it was, believe it or not, we reduced our fees. However, believe it or not, these cement guys and all the food guys, whatever the cement guys especially, they built it into the cost. They were just, you know what I mean? So it's not like you're walking down there usually paying it out of your pocket. It's usually lower than that fee structure. So it's still there, but
If you're looking at $1,000 bill.
All right.
Well, yeah, but you're looking at a big bill. We know somebody paid $2,000 to fix somebody else's tree that was going through and wrecking his. And one other item is you're required to have that tree by code. They pick the trees, and then you're paying for it when you buy the house because it's all built in, like you said. And then you have to pay to dig it up to do it over. I don't like that. People aren't fixing that kind of stuff. Yeah, well, they could correct that too.
Right.
Okay, last of all, the drug handle, which is, this is very brief. I think we all received an invitation to the groundbreaking celebration, which is Thursday. The festivities start at 12:30, and the actual program starts at 1, and the governor is going to be there, so that is very exciting for Oregon City, getting our governor to come to this event. And then the other thing I'll just pass this out is we've scheduled the meet contractor open house for anybody who's interested, and this is going to be advertised pretty much all over the place too. So anything on the drug handle, we've got a very active website and very committed to keeping things up to date. So just go to www.drughandleproject.com. It's very, very current updates.
Thank you, Nancy. Thanks for being patient. Under old business, we have none. Under new business on 6, we were just talking here, William and I, and we're going to put off a few of these things so we can get on to more important, because as I said, it's 8:45, and we thought we'd be out of here by now. But we're going to put off Land Use Committee and discuss that at the next meeting, as well as the retreat, which takes us down to C, Metro Enhancement Grant. William, are you?
Yeah. If I can, I hope that all the neighborhoods are aware of the two granting mechanisms in the city. One being the citizen or the Civic Improvement Trust, and the other is the Metro Enhancement Grants. Metro Enhancement Grants, the application deadline is this Friday at 3 p.m. So if you have a project in your neighborhood, and I think that Hillendale has one that we're thinking of. We heard a presentation a couple months ago, last month from the, I guess it's from Gaffney Lane. Gaffney Lane regarding their walking and running track, and there may be a couple of other things. So Larry Hanlon came up with a brilliant idea when he was visiting the Hillendale Neighborhood Association. And by the way, all of you are all invited to come to visit some other neighborhood associations just to see how other people do their thing. I mean, Chris and I go to almost all of them, and you're certainly welcome to as well. So Larry came up with a brilliant idea.
I'm going to make it very brief, but I'll let you chew on it, and we'll discuss it at the next meeting.
Oh, well, it's going to be at 8 o'clock by then, because the deadline is this Friday.
Okay, I'm talking about Friday.
That's Friday.
Do the whole thing.
No. Let me go with it.
Go.
Okay, we had discussed having a trailer for the CIC so that we could have our presentation equipment and different things, and then we will loan it to the concerts in the park and that. But it gives us a billboard that we put up in front of people. And the other thing that went with that was the grant for the Hillendale Association, which is due Friday. And I don't know what you want me to say, because
I thought the original idea was that one of the things that understand that the Metro Enhancement Grant process has $85,000 to give away, and the maximum grant is $25,000 per application. For example, when Matt came here last month and talked about the walking running trail around Gaffney Park, he applied for $25,000. There will be other people applying. I don't know who all the applicants are, but when Larry found out more about this, one of the ideas that he came up with actually was a discussion about having a movie night for the Hillendale Association, and someone said, what about the weather? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a canopy? And then just lights went on, and Larry said, well, why don't we get a canopy for the CIC? We could use it for the snow cones. We could use it for Chris brought up the cemetery during the Memorial Day festivities. It's often a little damp out there. It'd be nice to have a canopy for that. It'd be nice to have canopies if we do move National Night Out. We can use it for that, for the booth at the farmers market. And then he built on the idea, where are we going to store this thing? If we had a trailer, we could have tables and chairs and canopies and all of that stuff stored probably over at the fire station, or at the police station, and have the name of the Citizen Involvement Council on the side of it. Put the name on the tents, on the canopies as well. And we thought originally like a 20 by 20, but I think more prudently, to make it scalable, you'd want 4 10 by 10s. That way you don't have to take all 4 of them at once. And there's gutters that you can get that fit between them, and there's ways of tying the legs together so you have one column in the middle, and then you have 4 canopies. So that's something that if you don't remember, but that's
I do remember.
okay. Well, that's what I came away from your idea, was that the CIC could apply for a Metro Enhancement Grant for canopy and the trailer to store it in, and all those other things. So what do you think of that?
Good.
Go for it.
Well, I'm on here.
Well, Larry got an estimate for a trailer, and we don't need detailed specifications on it. All we have to have is a general idea, and you can get a very nice trailer for about $2,500.
And I do know, because I just bought some 10 by 10 tents, the heavy duty kind off eBay, and they were like $160, right around there for a 10 by 10. Good one with all the sides on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
So if we got 4 of those, let's say $200 a piece for some first class, counting shipping and everything. 4 of those at $200 a piece, $800, and $2,500 for the trailer. What are we talking there? $3,300, and to put the lettering and the signing on it and so on.
Go for $6,000, and that would provide some chairs.
We do have Tom up next. He's been trying to get my attention, and then I think we have Chris.
I have strong feelings about grants and their use. I think oftentimes they become an unwise use of taxpayer monies. It seems to me that if we feel that it's important for the CIC to have a canopy or anything, then maybe we should just be passing the hat and asking people who believe that that is an item that we should have, that we've self-funded, rather than going out and applying for free grants. Because believe me, folks, there is no such thing as a free grant. It's all coming out of our pockets, whether it's being granted by the federal government, by the state government, by the city government, by dumping fees, whatever it is. That's our tax dollars paying for somebody's wishes. Thank you.
I had one concern, thinking about the trailer. That trailer is gonna need to have insurance on it, and that would be city insurance. And I don't believe, other than city employees could pull that trailer.
I checked with my insurance company, and they would do an override on it as a civic function, and it would have to be who pulled the trailer. It would only insure the trailer with my vehicles, but it's something that we could go.
I think we ought to look into it.
Yeah,
I think
we could look into.
we need to check with Nancy I, who takes care of the city insurance on this.
Can I ask another question? Does the city maybe have a canopy that can be borrowed and returned?
They may, and we can investigate all those things.
That was one of those, I believe, that they were trying to get out that time. William, did you have a comment that you were making?
I'm not going to rebut the issue of whether or not grants are good or not. I mean, there's a program involved, and we can either accept them or not. But our saying that grants are not good isn't going to make the grant program go away.
Okay. I have a feeling that this conversation could go on, but we don't have enough information to work on a grant for this year. So I think that's it.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
You could appoint a task force.
Okay, I guess I could have appointed a task force, says William.
See if Larry and I can get a grant application done by Friday.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint a task force who can get to the deadline for that very same idea of trailers, chairs, 4 10 by 10 canopies, all fit within $6,000
Is this based on getting all the information?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. We've had some discussion on it prior to the motions. Nancy?
I would just want to clarify that the Metro Enhancement Grant money is from Metro tipping fees, which Tom mentioned as being dumping fees. So it's not part of your taxes. This is Metro having placed this lovely facility in our community, agreed many years ago that they would take a percentage of their tipping fees, which they charge all the haulers when they come in to dump their stuff. Yeah, it's
50 cents a ton.
50 cents a ton, you're right, thank you. So this was agreed to, it's sort of like, gosh, sorry we're there, can we just give you a little bit of something to make us feel not so bad? And so it really is, and it's intended to help out the community, so.
But no charges that I get in a bill from B&B includes the tipping fee that they're paying.
Thank you, back there.
So there's a motion on the floor.
There is a motion on the floor at this point to go forward with the grant application based on the research they do, and I'm not quite sure, would you be informing all of the membership before you go forward, or you just get some information that,
Time to do that.
okay, so nobody here would know about what you found out?
Well,
You just go forward with it?
if we can complete the grant, if the task force can complete a grant by Friday.
And my recommendation is, Tom, that we contact you and we move on with it.
Oh, I think it's more everyone, not just.
Well, I don't think we have the time to pull everybody together to do it.
Motion was, $2,000.
Right, I think it's all been determined.
Okay.
Grant application, $6,000.
Right, if we don't.
But you'll find out about insurance and all that for them. I guess the motion's on the floor, of course, to take a vote. And why I was interjecting that was to see if Chris would find out about insurance, if that, or the responsibility of the city versus, I mean, we're not insured, the CIC itself, unless it's under the city, I would assume. So let's go through with that vote. All those in favor of approving the grant preparation for $6,000, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Yay.
How many nays do I have in here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and abstain.
It's Bruce, Paul, Kathy, and Tom.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd rather have my postage.
You've got that postage. Moving right along, Ms. Taken's already been addressed. I'm starting to get tongue-tied. Addressed. Chris, for printing, is that something we can talk next time, or do you want to quickly say?
That's basically up to you and
I think because we all saw that in the email you sent out. Is there further information? Oh, to the three of us, not to everyone else. Okay. Chris did a lot of detail on going out to 3 or 4, or maybe more. I'm not sure how many. Do you want to just discuss that real quick, Chris? Tell everybody.
who the low bid is?
Sure.
Is that what you want?
Sure.
I sent, request for proposals for Buell's, Executive Copy and Printing, and Minuteman Press. And, they came back, and then that Friday that they were due, I received, information from the city regarding postage. So, to be fair, I sent another email out to those 3 companies, allowing them to change their bids if necessary because of the change in postage. I felt that was only fair. And only one company came back and changed their bid, and the low bid was still Executive Copy and Printing.
The one we currently use.
Correct.
Okay. If any, and so is the result of that is that everyone uses the same one because it's the lowest one? Okay. And they still go through you? Okay.
I had understood when we had the discussion regarding this, that since UPS also has a copy center and printing facility in our city, that they were going to be offered an opportunity to bid as well, down at the point.
I don't recall that.
FedEx, I think he had been mentioned because they have a facility up there.
The FedEx at the Point and the UPS in the Fred Meyer Center. They are local.
Franchise.
Yes, they are.
Can all those businesses contact the city at any moment and offer the
If they're not aware of what we're sending out, then it's difficult for them to blindly solicit.
Chris, is it not true that we were looking specifically for CIC, not the city, that you were only looking at our newsletters? Yeah.
Right.
If we were going to do that, Chris went to a lot of work for all this. It might be that we have a subcommittee, almost of people that would do that. Chris, just show them what you did, and they're responsible to do it. Does that make sense, Chris?
That's fine. You need to do it way before the budget time.
Yeah, right. So let's put that on a future burner. Okay. Going into committee reports, Geological Symposium Committee.
Yep, we've been meeting, we've got plans, we have a couple of dates picked in November, and we're working on having at least 3, possibly 4 presentations, one on slides, one on earthquakes, one on flooding, and one on general emergency preparedness.
We may combine the flooding and general emergency preparedness.
And so we have Paul and Steve and Christina Kaczynski, and what's your name again?
No, I get called Kathy a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's that report. We're working on that.
The Bylaws Review Committee, that's postponed temporarily. I've been working on some other bylaws.
Tom?
Yes.
Steve,
I'm sorry.
We're meeting again on Thursday at 4.
We are?
You're going to have to hurry through that ground digging.
Is the governor invited?
Oh, this is. Okay. All right.
You're right.
I thought so. I was trying to schedule something that day. The Bylaws Review Committee, as I said, I got some experience recently rewriting Park Place, and so we'll be calling a meeting of this group right that's listed here, and we'll do that later. Video opportunities. For my part, after listening to Dana, which Dana? Dan Holiday, I was thinking, kept saying Fowler. Dan Holiday, that's kind of on a back burner right now, while they decide what's going to happen with the facilities. William, you have any comment?
No.
Okay. Reactivation of neighborhood associations, Gaffney Lane and Tower Vista. Any comment on that?
You bet.
I have one. Last Thursday, we had the 3rd reactivation meeting of Gaffney Lane neighborhood. I sent out an email to all CIC members asking them, reminding them about this meeting, and no one showed up except William and myself. It takes more than 2 of us to attempt to get these reactivated. It takes the whole committee. And so I'm asking for some assistance. It's not the William and Chris show.
I'm sorry. I'll try to look into some more.
Good.
So we do need the help.
You're right.
And the gentleman that was in the audience, he was from Gaffney Lane. And I think there's potential there to getting it going. So.
You said there was just one person there from the Gaffney Lane?
The gentleman that was
I thought you meant at your meeting. I'm sorry.
There were 4 or 5 neighbors. Derek Beneville, who's already the land use chair. They already have a treasurer, and then of course we held it at the Meadows Courtyard. Beautiful facility. They have homemade cookies. You'd come just for the refreshments, but it's a very nice facility. And so there are a number of residents from that facility that show up, and I don't know how active they will be in the neighborhood, but they're interested, and they show up and listen, and
They had good questions.
they had good questions, and so I suppose there were probably a dozen people there.
I didn't know if it was circulating.
That's what I was wondering. I mean, other than
There
this,
was nothing else. Just to show people that there's more than just Chris and me that are running this.
And to answer questions. I mean, they did have questions, and we were trying to explain to them, how we reactivated the Caulfield and the Barkley Hills neighborhoods, and they did. They had good questions.
We had a police officer there. We had Mayor Didway talk about the local option. It was a good meeting, but I think if we had some other people showing that it's not just Chris and me that are doing this.
We're the only 2 faces they've seen.
And it's we are.
tell me what. Okay, moving on to roundtable, I'd like to request for the sake of time that everyone keep it as brief and quick as possible, and just any special announcements you have so we can get around the room in a good order of time. So let's start right here.
Caulfield had a wonderful turnout. Our meeting ran way over, and it got a little heated, and I want you to know, Nancy, that I, for our community, apologize for the way your people were treated. I won't say any names, but that individual did a wonderful job, and I apologize, and it won't happen again. And we had a wonderful turnout, and that's really all I have to say.
Okay, Todd.
But Larry, how about your meetings?
Uh,
Every other month.
Yeah, we're going to every other month. I'm just trying to shut it down for time's sake. And then we're going to have during committee meeting too. So that'll all be determined.
Hazel Grove Wrestling Farms and South End are going to have their joint meeting, 2 weeks from this Thursday, May 19th. Everyone is invited. We have a wonderful guest speaker. Chief Mike Conrad of the Oregon City Police Department is our honorable guest, and I know he's always an exciting presenter.
Chris, did the postcard go out yet? Because Tom said he hasn't seen his yet. I didn't know.
I haven't seen an email, but you've got.
I gave it to you.
Today's the 2nd, though.
Okay. Well, so that he announced the meeting, and I'm sorry I couldn't come, but I've been working on Phil's Talking for the Heart. We did our bingo Saturday, and we worked on it Friday and Saturday, and it was a long day, and we did, anyway, I think we did really well. We had April, because May we didn't do as well, Teddy Bear Parade, Mother's Day, and everything, so we changed it to April. And Pioneer Community Center was great. It was packed, so hopefully we did a good job. Everybody had a good time. So I'm busy with that.
A couple issues. The city's tomorrow is going to have a ethics training class starting at 5 o'clock for the City Commission and the Urban Renewal Commission. And it's really kind of important if anybody ever would like to sit in and try to have an understanding or better appreciation of the responsibilities and the methodologies and things you're supposed to be doing. And then on Wednesday, we're having... Will it be recorded, Paul? It'll be recorded, but it's something that you should see.
Where will it be held?
What?
Where will it be held?
Here. Okay. Then on Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we're having a urban renewal work session. Again, it's another one that should be, that if anybody wants to keep track of what's happening within the city, and there's a lot of different issues that we're going to be bringing up and discussing, but it's going to be less formal, and there's going to be a lot more interaction, I believe, that's going to be taking place at that Wednesday work session. And then I'd like to make a motion very quickly that the CIC tactically support this community-based
outreach as outlined by Denise. And I think this is really critical for us to enter into a discussion across the community to where everyone gets a shot at impacting the directions and the priorities of the city and where we should be going and how we should be investing our money. There's a kind of an issue, and one of those issues is, do we really want to be a sustainable community? And it's a very trite term, overly used, sustainable. But what it really means is this perception: do we want to continue to be just a bedroom? Do we, and where do we really see us going, and where should we be prioritizing our what we're betting our farm on? And I for one, sitting on the Urban Renewal Commission, I would really love to hear people provide a lot of see the devil's advocate out there discussing and trying to bring counterpoint to every one of the thoughts. And so as we go out there and do this in a formal manner, where we come back and we have more buy-in, we have more solid thought about the direction we're going. So I'd like to say, I'd like this to be a motion actually coming up that we tactically support creating a community-based discussion.
And I think that'll be on the agenda next month, but I don't think anyone's going to make a motion until we understand it more, because what we heard tonight was just basic generalities. I've never even heard of it before, really, to understand it. Okay, Paul?
So it's definitely on the agenda.
Yeah, next month. Okay, next. Steve.
I'll let you handle the Park Place meetings, so I'll ask.
All right. Aaron. Okay, David's speaking for you tonight. Alice.
The Rockland neighborhood has their general meeting this Thursday night at 7 in College Station. And I'd like to see your Conrad and raise him with
He's in my neighborhood, right?
Excellent. We also have community elected also
Ready?
I'm bummed that all the great things are happening on Thursday night, because I have a part-time job on Thursday night, so I'm in spirit. Also, somebody asked me about the slow down signs that they've seen in the neighborhoods. Right down, it should actually county sheriff's office person, Patty McMillan. So if you need those signs or you need her information, please let me know, and then I'm gonna give the card number to William. And then also just put in your heads that August 10th is such a big turnout. What a great chance to do the August National Night Out, to really reach out to our neighborhoods in such a big way. And just, I think, just keep it in the top of your heads, and whatever we can do to support Chris and the city and the sheriff's, police department in making that a signature event for our.
Walter.
I was going to say, we had our meeting in Park Hills in April, and we had a 200% increase. Thanks to Chris, Amanda and I also worked hard. We're trying to get rid of the word association. We think it scares our Norwich States people, because originally that development was supposed to have an association, so I think people are afraid to kind of start that up again. But that we actually had the idea also from one of the other neighborhoods here down there. This is not an association, it's not a close product.
It's not a homeowners association.
Right. But we're also getting now, I think even after that meeting, we had 4 people come onto our Facebook page. We have about 26 people on our Facebook page. We basically, myself, Chris, Don site in our neighborhood, and we basically post stuff that you guys tell us that Chris sends out. We're posting links sometimes to our neighborhood things that we read in the Trail News, that type of stuff. Just little, tidbits here and there. I think we're that's the part that's missing, and kind of I'm glad to see that we're moving forward with the meeting minutes and electronic. So I think that's another piece that's missing, and it's the future of moving from the veteran community to what really is happening. It's something that the way that people interact. Most people are just way too busy to get involved. They can get involved electronically, and I think it would behoove our organization to continue to remember that every minute. The second thing that I wanted to just point out real quick was if you saw the Portland and our big sister neighborhood here, Portland Magazine, the April edition is excellent. It's all about real estate. There's a pull-out. You go through that, it's a big pull-out section with a chart of every neighborhood of Portland, but also the outlying communities. And what really shocked me was that in Oregon City, now, of course, Westland and Oregon and Lake Oswego and Wilsonville don't have this number, but we're not too bad compared to our other neighbors. 40% of our home sales in Oregon City last year are distressed properties. And so that, what William is saying, and Paul is saying, that those properties aren't occupied, you're not getting property tax, so you're getting hit on both sides. So you got to get people into those houses, you got to get people to keep those houses, and to have a job nearby to keep that house going. For this all to work, So when it goes back to the real estate property, we all know this, but when you see 40% distress, that means they're short sales, they're bankruptcies, they're foreclosures. The number is double what it is across the river here. So you can look at that if you get a chance. It's pretty phenomenal. If you're buying a house or you're selling a house, it's really great too. But it's also just really good information. And to see where that 40% kind of really hard, because you see all the sales signs in the neighborhood and you wonder what's really happening here. But that gives you an idea of what's really happening. You don't really know how these people are making money. Yeah, they're losing money. What's happening?
Thanks, Walter. Chris?
I'd like to invite everyone to the Metropolis on Wednesday, May 11th. It's going to be held out at the Oregon City High School in the main auditorium. And it's on drug influence recognition for parents. It's going to be put on by Officer Brian Willard, who is our drug recognition expert. He is going to teach parents what to look for and how to perform some of the tests on the kids for determination if they have drugs on board. And Officer Dave Edwins, who's the school resource officer assigned to the high school, he's going to talk about what drugs are most common in our community and what enforcement actions we're taking on a day-by-day basis. And also he'll talk about the Parent Aid program that allows parents to bring their children in for a urine test for drugs. And he's going to talk, Officer Edwins is going to talk about the marijuana, heroin, and the other drugs. And just so you know, heroin is on the rise in Oregon City. So I would say this would be good for grandparents also. So for those of us whose children are grown, I think it's going to be a good program. And we're going to have a guest speaker also, our judge, Lorraine McNeese, is going to speak on her experiences with one of her children. So we'll start at 7 o'clock in the main auditorium at the high school on May 11th. So hope to see you there.
Nancy?
I have nothing else.
William? The only thing that I think might be of interest to the order is the budget committee, the city budget committee, approved, well, the budget committee has approved, the city commission hasn't ratified it yet, but the budget line item for the neighborhood association communication was unchanged, which I think is $36.50. Help me, Chris.
That includes trail news.
Not all of it.
There's a portion. We get like the 25,000.
Part of it is for trail news, and the other part of it is the other part of trail news is covered by parks. Yeah. Okay, but so we have basically the same budget as we did last year. And when I asked the city manager about it, he says, you know what? He says, if it turns out when we get more neighborhoods activated and so on, if we need more money, he says, all we need to get is a request back from the CIC, and we'll see if we can find some other ways of moving money around. But it sounds like we have at least as much money. We didn't suffer any cuts, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Also, your Chief Conrad, and our Mayor Neely, and all those are the one who really runs the city, David Frazier, the city The joker card, the wild card is, a long time ago I asked Dr. Scott Burns, who is one of the chief geology professors at Portland State and teaches worldwide. He's just getting back from Mexico, giving lectures down there, because I've had some specific questions for him. We have an earthquake off the coast. How will it impact us here in Oregon City? Does it matter if it's a rainy season when there's more moisture in the slopes in Park Place, McLaughlin, or in Kanema, or is it better if we have that earthquake in the summer? Can we plan it? Beyond that, since I stepped in where Nancy was the chair, we've had 2 steering committee meetings, and we've got our general meeting planned. Plus, we have our first newsletter and over a year going out, so an actual newsletter. So at the last steering committee, we approved some new bylaws, updated them to address some of the concerns that we've had in the past and any that we might have in the future. At the May general meeting, we're also got a new slate of officers, of which I'm right now that looks like I'll be the chair, and that we put up for a vote of our general membership. And we also have a new slate of steering committee members. Some of those are also represented from the Oregon City View Manor and Clackamas Heights. They've never been represented, and that's 200 homes, as well as a parent from the PTA, one of their officers, from Holcomb Elementary School. We've asked a teacher also to be on that. And in the newsletter that we just sent out, we've asked representatives from Apperson Way and different areas all around Holcomb to be a part of our steering committee and to give us a wider range of representation. And you're invited to that meeting. It's on Monday, May 16th at 7 p.m. unless that's the finals of the Dancing with the Stars, and we move it to the next night. Just kidding. Anyway, we hope to see you all there. And I think that concludes the meeting. Is there any other comment?
Amen.
Okay, thank you very much. So it went on longer.